Greetings, digital world, and welcome back to yet another episode of Spliced In Later, where today it is time for another movie review. And this one is one that I did not expect to be reviewing for you because I just didn't really care that much about seeing it. Wasn't on my radar, not for any particular reason. I'm not boycotting it or whatever. It just didn't interest me. Mainly, I didn't have the fan base for it. The trailer didn't particularly wow me, but I ended up seeing it anyway, so now I'm going to talk about it. So I guess that whole introduction is redundant, but it's content, so let's get right into it. Today I am reviewing for you the new movie Uncharted, which is a movie based on the video game series Uncharted, starring Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. Now, I don't think this review will be particularly long, because I don't have that much to say about it, really. It's a perfectly fine film. It is not fantastic in any sense of the word, but it is also not terrible. But I think it's worth hearing a review for somebody who has seen the movie and not played the games, because I have not played any Uncharted games. I know of it. I have not been living under a rock. I'm aware of the Uncharted series of games starring Nathan Drake with sidekick mentor character Sully or whatever, and the games are a lot of running and jumping. And I know there is a lot of love for it. Indeed, the people I saw this movie with were bigger fans of Uncharted than I am. And to say bigger fans, meaning they played the games and I haven't. They weren't particularly thrilled to be seeing it based on what they'd seen from the trailer. So I was also a little worried. I thought, oh dear. But right off the bat, I need to say that I cannot comment in this review on whether the movie is faithful to the games, because I just don't know. I feel like it is in some places. I feel like it probably is in others. Based on the reactions from my friends that I saw it with, some things they got right, some things they didn't get right. But I can't sit here and say, the movie didn't adapt this from the games perfectly, therefore the movie's terrible. Or this person was surprisingly a really good adaptation of this character. Because I just don't know. So this is a unique review. This is just from somebody who's just seen the movie for what it was. And for the movie for what it was, it is a completely acceptable film. It is not going to go down as the most memorable action-adventure movie of all time, but it also is not terrible. It is competently made. It has some very likable stars. The story goes along at a pace which is interesting to watch. There's some good action spectacles, and you leave the cinema, in my opinion, having not wasted your time, unless you're a big Uncharted fan and you think you wasted your time. For me, it was a surprisingly enjoyable watch. I think I will watch it again. I think I will add it to my movie collection. But we'll get into it, basically. I guess to give you a brief idea of what Uncharted is, if you haven't played the games and haven't seen anything about the movie, it's basically a action-adventure movie. A bit of Indiana Jones, a bit of parkour, a bit of buddy cop drama sort of stuff. But basically it stars Tom Holland of Spider-Man fame playing Nathan Drake, or Nate, I guess. I'm not sure which one is preferred. He's called Nate a lot in the movies, but I was sure he was just called Nathan Drake. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He is a young go-getter. He's a bit aimless in life. He's got some mad skills when it comes to jumping and flipping and bartending. But he's also a thief. He's a con man. He's out for number one. The only real connection he has is with his long-lost brother. Anyway, some guy called Victor Sullivan, or Sully, played by Mark Wahlberg, shows up and says, hey, I was just with your brother, and we are trying to find this missing gold. Your brother's not here anymore, whatever. Do you want to come help me find the gold instead? And Nate goes, maybe it's a chance to find my brother again. Also, sounds like fun. I'm in. From there, Nate and Sully go running about all across the world, following clues to find this lost gold, all the while competing against other people who are interested in the gold, namely an Australian called Chloe, who's a rival per se, not really a villain, but someone who's also chasing after the gold. But definitely villains in Antonio Banderas's villain man, whose name I do not remember, and his lethal assassin Braddock, whose name I do remember, who are also after the gold in more violent means. And that's about it. Racing to get the gold, solving puzzles, getting out of precarious situations. The movie does go off the rails in certain points, but I feel like that's what happens in the games. Seeing the action scenes where Nate's falling out of a plane, or is stuck underground, or in this wacky final outing involving pirate ships flying through the sky, it does seem like these are direct references to action moments in the game. So for whatever reason. They do translate very well to an action movie scene, and all the CGI is fairly subpar. Tom Holland, as he already has proven, is very good at the acrobatics and the jumping and whatever, so he does pretty good. Basically, I enjoyed the movie. It's not, as I've said probably 5 or 6 times, something truly remarkable, but it is a good time. Tom Holland is very likable in the lead role as Nathan Drake. I will say this, he's convincing me that he will be able to make a name for himself in cinema outside of Spider-Man. I think I was a bit worried going into it. Tom Holland has just become Peter Parker in the MCU Spider-Man. And now I don't know much about Nathan Drake from the games, but looking at a picture of Nathan Drake, he definitely looks a lot older than Tom Holland. So I'm guessing this is a young Nathan Drake. And Tom Holland, playing a young anything, there is that problem that he would just end up being Peter Parker in everything he does. But there's a different attitude to him. Apart from the running and jumping, his swagger, his attitude, the way he talks to people, this is a very different character. So good on Tom Holland for doing that. This is a confident, cocky guy who's very skilled. He knows he's very skilled, but also makes mistakes. But he does have his heart in the right place when it comes to situations. A classic hero. Mark Wahlberg as Sully. He's basically just Mark Wahlberg in the movie. Again, I don't know exactly about the adaptations from the games, but from what I've heard and from what I've seen of Sully as well, Mark Wahlberg really didn't become Sully like Tom Holland, I guess, became Nathan Drake. He really just, hey, I'm Mark Wahlberg and I'm in this movie. He's got good camaraderie with Tom Holland. They've got some good banter. You can see from 100 miles away where his character arc is going. So nothing really surprises you in terms of the decisions he makes. And he's an interesting character. He definitely is very unlikable, which if you're not a fan of Mark Wahlberg, will make the movie very easy to follow. But from what I've researched about Sully, the adaptation between these two is not as seamless. It does seem like Mark Wahlberg didn't really say or try to become the Sully character. Rather, he just got hired to be Mark Wahlberg, and that's it. So that's a little disappointing. But from a standpoint, from a viewer of someone who's just seen this movie and isn't trying to think about the games too much, I thought their camaraderie, their banter, their bickering was pretty good, pretty likable for the film. Everyone else is serviceable. I think the Australian Chloe is the only other character from the games. She's pretty good. Barrack? That's not a word. Braddock, the villainous sidekick monster lady. She's pretty lethal. Antonio Banderas, it's always lovely to see him in things. I think he's very underused in the movie, unfortunately. But it's still great to see him. And they're really it. There's some minions, big hulking minions that chase Tom Holland everywhere we go, but that's about it. The action scenes are pretty awesome. They are very reminiscent of video games. I guess that comes across quite well. Some scenes are a bit fake. The CGI doesn't really hold up as well, but that's okay. This is definitely a turn your brain off sort of movie. This is something where you shouldn't sit there and think that shouldn't happen that way. If you are trying to make this movie follow logic 100%, you will spend the last 20 minutes of this movie going, what is going on? This can't possibly happen. If you allow yourself to just enjoy yourself, it's a lot of fun, which I think was pretty good too. I mean, what more can be said about Uncharted when you can't really talk about the video games? There's not a lot of content for me to say. It's very run-of-the-mill. It's very average. I thought it was perfectly fine. I've been seeing the reviews saying that, it's just terrible and it's an insult to the Uncharted games and all that, which I can't comment on. I can't say that's a bit unfair. You should just watch a movie for the sake of a movie, because you are adapting something. If you are adapting a video game, you have to try and adapt the video game with respect and reference to the source material. You cannot just take the name Uncharted and do your own thing. It's kind of like if you adapted Harry Potter, but then it wasn't even about Harry Potter. I mean, it's hard enough to watch Harry Potter films, in my opinion, having read the books, because your brain is constantly going, they changed that, they left that out, they put that subplot in. That character doesn't do that in the books. That's uncharacteristic for them. And it's not just Harry Potter. I mean, the Percy Jackson issues are tremendously famous for how the movies just did not give a shit about how the books went. Hunger Games, Maze Runner, it's always going to be there. Video games, I think specifically, are really hard to translate onto screen because it's a different style as well. You play a video game, there's a healthy balance of story and also gameplay. And when you take out the gameplay, there probably isn't that much story there, which is why I'm struggling to make this review longer than 10 minutes. So you have to change some things. You have to update it a bit to make it more of a movie than a game. So it's always going to be an uphill battle, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if people agree with me, but I think the Mortal Kombat that came out last year is one of the greatest movies ever made, and that's a video game movie. I haven't seen the older Mortal Kombats, but also, again, I don't religiously play the Mortal Kombat games, so I don't know for certain if it is a good movie based on the source material or not. Speaking as an average moviegoer who just went to see Uncharted because he had nothing else to do on a Thursday night and he likes Tom Holland, I had fun. I do not enjoy spending money to see it. I had a good time. I probably will have a good time when I watch it again. I'm not insulted or offended by it in any sense of the word. It's also a fault of the movie, I suppose, though, that it is completely fine in that I'm struggling with things to talk about it. It is a movie you have seen many times before, just in different genres. If you've seen Indiana Jones, if you've seen National Treasure, you have seen what's going on in this movie. If you liked Tom Holland in Spider-Man, well, you will like him in this. He's a likable guy. If you're a Mark Wahlberg fan, you'll like him in this. It needed something, some over-the-top moment or really good character acting or something for it to stick with me enough to go, boy, you have to see this film. It doesn't worry me one way or another if you see it. I think it's worth going to see it if the only reason you're not is because people are saying, oh, it's not faithful to the games. If you're not an Uncharted player, if you don't play the Uncharted games religiously, I don't think that's going to be a problem for you. I think, generally speaking, you'll have a good time. If you are an Uncharted fan who plays the games religiously and thinks that it was made on hallowed ground, maybe skip it. You don't have to see it. You can just pretend it doesn't exist. It won't ruin the games for you, that's for sure. Overall, I give Uncharted a very solid 7 out of 10. It is completely watchable. It is enjoyable. It is fun. It is a good time, whether you turn your brain off or you appreciate the performances. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of banter. You won't go home and think, oh boy, I can't wait for Uncharted 2. That was amazing. What a ride. You'll just go, that was good. That's a good movie. Competently made. Well done. There you are. That's it. This could be my shortest episode. I'm not sure. I really don't have that much to say about it. I'm not invested in it one way or another. I think my overall message of this episode, though, is that Uncharted is perfectly fine. And if you're on the fence about seeing it, that's fine. I would recommend seeing it. I think it's worth it. But don't go out of your way to see it. If you've got a choice between spending time with your long-lost dad who came back into your life for one night only, or seeing Uncharted, probably hang out with your dad. But if it's between watching Uncharted and sitting at home watching an ant walk across your floor, give Uncharted a go. Time well spent in that regard. All right, thank you very much for listening. I will be back next week at least once for a review. Finally, we will get to see the new movie, The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves and starring Robert Pattinson. I'm very excited to see that one. I have very high expectations for it, so I hope it holds up. Whether I will also be back twice that week, another for just a standard episode, we'll wait and see. I'm currently working on my list for the top 10 movies of 2012, which is a very solid list of films. It's really hard whittling that down to 10 top films and 11 honorable mentions. So whether that will be done by next week, we'll just have to wait and see. But definitely at least a Batman review next week, that I can promise you. Until then, stay safe, stay kind to one another. I love and appreciate you as always. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.